Welcome back to Strategic Planning. I'm John Wallace. We're in week 4 now. Strategic planning is, of course, a disciplined effort to produce fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what an organization is, what it does, and why it does it. The benefits of strategic planning include promotion of strategic thought and action, improved decision-making, enhanced organizational responsiveness to change, improved organizational performance, higher organizational citizenship behavior, and enhanced organizational learning. These are highly important in today's economy, whether we work for a for-profit, a nonprofit, or a government entity. Any of us who've done business with the government know how slow they can be at times. Characteristics of strategic planning are concerned with identifying and responding to the most fundamental issues facing the organization today and preparing us for the issues that are going to come up tomorrow. Addressing the subjective question of purpose and the often competing values that influence our mission and our strategies. Emphasizing the importance of external trends and forces as they are likely to affect the organization and the mission. And attempt to be politically realistic by taking into account the concerns and preferences of internal and especially external stakeholders. Non-stockholders, stakeholders. This comes from an article by Poyster and Strebe in 1994 in Public Productivity and Management Review. Strategic planning is not a substitute for strategic thinking, acting, and learning. A substitute for leadership. Synonymous with creating an organizational strategy. There is a difference between what is deliberate and what is emergent. There is a difference between what is intended and what is realized. And we have to understand that that is always the case. We talked about it last week. Characteristics of strategic planning rely heavily on the active involvement of senior-level managers and sometimes elected officials or other stakeholders, assisted by staff support where needed. Requires the candid confrontation of critical issues by key participants in order to build the commitment we need to the plans. Has to be action-oriented and stress the importance of developing plans for implementing the strategies and focusing on implementing decisions now in order to position the organization favorably for the future. Strategic management links strategic planning with implementation, is concerned with managing the organization in a strategic way and an ongoing basis. As I've said many times, a strategic plan is a living, breathing document that does not get put on the shelf and on a regular basis, whether it's monthly or quarterly. In some cases, maybe sooner. We're checking our measurements against the goals to see if we're on the right track. Strategic management systems are one means of inducing and linking strategic thinking, acting, and learning throughout an organization or some other entity. Are intended to promote strategic thought, action, and learning, and to control and guide the way strategies are implemented, and to develop the capacities for future action consisting of mission and vision, strategic planning, results-oriented budgeting, strategic measurement, and performance management. Just as a graphic from Bryson, and this source actually is, Bryson discusses it from Poyser and Strebe, we have external monitoring and internal monitoring. The mission, vision, and values are central to everything that we do, and you can see how it's a continual cycle flowing through. There are several different types of strategic management systems: layered or stacked units of management models, strategic issues management models, contract models, portfolio models, goal or benchmark models, which are commonly used. Each one has its strengths and weaknesses, and each system is in practice actually a hybrid of the other. Each system is also prone to driving out strategic thinking, acting, and learning, because all we do is go back to check the measurements. We quit thinking ahead. Strategic management systems include tools and techniques that can emphasize process or content. Process tools and techniques can foster or reinforce centralized or decentralized interactions across the organization. Content approaches favor experts and expert knowledge, and therefore there are limited interactions across the organization. When it comes to implementation, the hardest part of implementation is always in the details. Performance measurement and management. What goals and objectives, what specific things did we say we were going to do? The program and project management, the budgets, the personnel involved to complete the tasks, and ongoing learning and readjustment. Leadership is the inspiration and mobilization of others to undertake collective action in pursuit of a common good. Even in a for-profit corporation, there's still pursuit of a common good. Leaders' influence will turn on their own qualities of character, expertise, prestige, intelligence, charm, and credibility, but these will have little impact unless they engage the relevant needs and motivations of the persons they're trying to influence. That's from expert James McGregor Burns, who we've talked about in previous classes. Effective strategic management requires understanding the context of the discussion, understanding the people involved, including your own paradigms, sponsoring the process, championing the process, facilitating the process, and fostering the collective leadership. So let's discuss each one of those in turn. Effective strategic management requires using dialogue and discussion to create a meaningful process, clarify mandates, articulate mission, identify strategic issues, develop effective strategies, and possibly develop a vision of success. Making and implementing decisions in arenas. Now you might say, what do you mean? We're going to an arena to see a big show or to see a big concert? No. If the discussion involves finance, then you need people who understand finance in the discussion group. Enforcing rules, setting disputes, and managing residual conflicts. And putting it all together in one final piece. In context, we need to appreciate the history of the organization, but we don't want to get bogged down in it. Histories are great, and there are some stories we'll need to learn from the histories that help bind the organization together, as Edgar Schein would say. But we need to tailor the strategic planning process to fit the organization and know when to go big or when to choose smaller objectives. You have to understand the participants who are involved and understand and appreciate the diversity and the commonality between them. Develop strength of character and insight, and understand each individual's competencies, just as you've been asked to do within your group. Sponsoring the process requires articulating the purpose and importance of the strategic planning effort. If we're not going to be committed to it, then let's not do it. This makes no sense. It's too hard to do an effective, strong strategic plan, especially when we know there's going to be conflict involved. If we're not committed, don't start. Commit the necessary resources to the effort. So many times organizations start on a strategic plan, but don't commit the time and resources. We get pulled away by our other day-to-day tasks, and so can't finish it. Emphasize at the beginning and at critical points that action and change are going to result. We're not doing this to say, oh, what we're doing yesterday works just fine, we'll keep doing that. We need to encourage and reward creative thinking, constructive debate, and multiple sources of input and insight. Be aware of the possible need for outside consultants. Strategic planning initiatives led by someone internal to the organization become difficult and bogged down because there's too much territory involved for that person. Be willing to exercise power and authority to keep the process on track. One of my compatriots in doing a strategic planning retreat with an organization will say at the very beginning, we're going to institute the ELMO rule. ELMO stands for enough already, let's move on. We get to a point where we cannot solve an issue or come to agreement on a discussion, then we're going to set it aside for a while and move on to keep the agenda moving and come back to it when there's time. Of course, as Jim Collins would say, in Good to Great, you need to get the right people on the bus and champion the process. Keep strategic planning high on people's agendas. Attend to the process without promoting a specific solution. Let the ideas and the discussion have their course. Think about what has come together, the people, the tasks, the information, all the reports, at or before key decision points. Organize the time, space, materials, and participation needed for the process to succeed. Don't leave anybody or any set of data out. Pay attention to the languages used to describe strategic planning and implementation. We've discussed it before. You want to make sure that everybody is understanding the same terminology and keep pushing the process along. You have to facilitate the process. Know the strategic planning process, whether you're using Bryson's 10 steps or something else, and explain how it works to the participants at the beginning and at many points along the way. You have to remind people this is where we are, this is what we're going through, and this is where we're going to get to at the end. You need to tailor the process to the organization and to the group involved. convey a sense of humor and enthusiasm for the process, and help the group get unstuck. People get bogged down in discussion sometimes. You need to say, hey, time out, let's take a break. We'll come back in 10 minutes and start up again. Press groups towards taking action and assigning responsibility for specific actions. And whenever possible, you should do this in your daily practice for business, period. Congratulate people who are involved. Fostering collective leadership relies on teams. Focuses on the network and coalition development because that will continue to help the organization succeed well after the strategic plan is implemented. Establish specific mechanisms for sharing power, responsibility, and accountability. Meaningful dialogue is highly important. Understand the design and use of discussion forums. Seize opportunities to provide interpretation and give direction in difficult and uncertain situations when those tough topics come up. Reveal and name real needs and real conditions. We're talking about change in the real world and the real issues that the organization either faces now or could face in the future. We have to help followers frame and reframe issues and strategies. Now, if you're leading the team, followers in that sense includes everybody who's on the team as well. Offer compelling visions of the future. If the strategic planning team, and then going out into the organization, throughout the organization, vertically and horizontally, has a clear vision, you are much more likely to be able to get success. Champion new and improved ideas for addressing the strategic issues, and detail the actions and the expected consequences. If we do X, this will happen. If we don't do it, we're going to face this instead. Decision arenas help us understand the design and use of arenas, mediate and shape conflict within and among the stakeholders, understand the dynamics of political influence and how to target resources appropriately, build winning, sustainable coalitions. When we break as a group from our strategic process, our strategic plan, even at the end of a day, you want folks going off together, excited, and sharing knowledge and information about what's happening. And we need to avoid bureaucratic imprisonment. If you haven't seen the 60 Minutes story about the turnaround at Chrysler and their CEO, it's absolutely worth watching. And just search 60 Minutes on Time and Chrysler. And Sergio, who is actually the CEO for 5 different corporations globally, has done an amazing job. But he does not sit in a high ivory tower in the former CEO suite, which has now become a mausoleum, because that's a death trap, according to Sergio. He sits on the second floor right next to all of his engineers so they can actually work together and solve problems. And if he's needed, he's available. You have to understand the norms, disputes, and conflicts that are going to occur. Understand the design of our strategic plan and use of formal and informal courts of discussion. Foster organizational integrity and educate others about ethics, constitutions, laws, and norms. They have to understand the values of the organization, the bylaws. Apply the constitutions, bylaws, laws, and norms to specific cases, what's acceptable and what's not. Adapt them as needed for changing times, and resolve conflicts between our bylaws, constitutions, laws, visions, values, missions. Make sure there's no conflict there. In our case in particular, we're working with virtual teams, and sometimes that happens. We aren't actually meeting face-to-face, though we can if need be. But you need to establish regular group interaction, firm rules of communication, use visual forms of communication where possible, imitate the attributes of teams that are actually meeting face-to-face, give and receive each other regular feedback and assistance, agree on technology standards. Within your e-college platform and the Group A and Group B work, there are discussion forums set up to talk about every issue. You need to be appropriate, constructively criticize, and wherever possible, positive in your discussions. Use 360-degree feedback. Everybody needs to have some input to better understand and evaluate each of you as team members. There is a virtual meeting room within eCollege. If you want, you could also hop on Skype or go to meeting.com, which you can register for a free 30-day trial. If you were doing this within your organization, you need to know which employees effectively use email to build team rapport. Smooth the way for an employee's next assignment if membership on the team or the team itself is not permanent. You want to be available to your team members, but don't wait for them to seek you out. Nobody wants to be the person on the team that fell down. Occasionally it happens because life happens for all of us. And in the end, we're going to bring it all together. Planning is the organization of hope. There are always detractors within a strategic planning process, devil's advocates, naysayers, and we let them have their say. But at the same time, we need to turn that around and offer a hope, a vision for the future that we're going to enact. Thomas More said, usually the main problem with life conundrums is that we don't bring to them enough imagination. In your strategic planning sessions, you need to step outside of the boundaries. You need to push the envelope as far as it can go. Again, the only way to find the limits of the possible is by going beyond them to the impossible. Now, the financial constraints of the organization and the resources available will help bring you back down to earth or lead you in ways to find more resources to achieve those objectives. And of course, Margaret Mead, one of my favorite life quotes, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Charles Handy, we've quoted before, the companies that survive longest are the ones that work out what they uniquely can give to the world, not just growth or money, but their excellence, their respect for others, or their ability to make people happy. And Alvin Toffler said, you've got to think about big things while you're doing the small things so that all the small things flow in the right direction. That's it for this segment. Thank you for listening, and I will see you online. If you have questions or comments or concerns, you need to call me or send me an email, and I will respond quickly.